this must be the only one in existence. I don't know anyone else who's made a MA020 VE Pro where we're using the MA030 EVO board. Hi guys, Garage RC here, back on another video. So today's video is one of these videos I've been tinkering around with for a while, and I've been kind of trying to make the video but not getting around to it and then being distracted. This all started off with my beloved EVO, so Mini Z all-wheel drive EVO. I love this car and I think it's very versatile. Yes, I think other things outperform it in certain areas, but for an overall easy to use car, it's pretty impressive and it can surprise you. So this car is set up at the moment in race mode, so it's got grip tyres and it's set to 98mm wheelbase. Now with the EVO, you can only use the double wishbone suspension at the back. Excuse the untidiness of this car at the moment, it's a bit dusty. At 98mm, you can't use it at 94, and you can't make this car 90mm without just making it front wheel drive only. And for mini RC, it's hard to drift front wheel drive cars, and I don't think it handles the best in that setup for what it is. So I wanted to make it 94mm and still use a double wishbone, and I also wanted to make it 90mm and still have it all-wheel drive, so I could use it as an all-wheel drive drift car and put drift bodies on it. So this is where the problem starts, because this car, not only is it an issue with the not being able to make it 90mm really, the motor mount gets in the way. And you can see on mine I have actually adjusted my motor mount so I can get more bodies on. So if I wanted to put, say, a Nissan 180 SX shell on this car, it's going to be impossible. And that's what started the journey. So behind me here I have a car which I painted recently, and I put body kit on it, a Garage Hero body kit, and I made some wheel arches myself. And I really wanted to put this on the EVO. Sounded like an impossible task. So I set about looking at the electronics in the cars and what I could do to combine the two. So what my template really is the Mini Z MA020 VE Pro. So this is a VE Pro, it's brushless. You've got 3 motor wires there. It's got a gyro setup. It's all-wheel drive, and it has the rear double wishbone suspension, which is very nice, and it's set up at 90mm, and these cars are brilliant. One of the issues you have with these being older is that the radio isn't quite as good as the newer EVO radio, and also you can't adjust the gyro from the transmitter. You have to use the ICS lead to turn the gyro on or set it up. I think it defaults at 50% if you just plug it in, but with the ICS lead you can change the settings on the gyro, and that can be a little bit of an issue when you're going from drifting on a kitchen floor, a slippy drift track, or onto RCP where you need less gyro. So for that reason, I wanted to be able to use my EVO radio setup. And my favorite EVO radio, as you know, is the NB4, which I love to use with all my setups. So I can't use that with this car. I can use my EX6R, which is a brilliant radio, but I still prefer my NB4. So how do we go about making... So here is another... EVO, which is set to 94mm, if I can get it out of the shell. Okay, so here's an EVO that's set to 94mm, and you can see now at the back I haven't got the double wishbone suspension. I've got the trailing arm regular kind of suspension, and this car drifts nicely, but you know, in my heart I wanted to have something like this but newer that I could use my flysky with, and that's where this project starts. So I'm going to cut across now to the ingredients and how we went about it. That involves, I'll need a speed controller, receiver, unit for an EVO. This comes with all the servo motors and everything, but the servo motor is the wrong size, so I've got a one off my Mini Z ready to go. Also we'll need a brushless motor, so I've got a brushless motor here ready to go, 8500 kV. I've got all the parts I need to assemble this car, so I've got bearings and all sorts. So the original plan was just to switch over a chassis that I've got already, a Mini MA020, but I had some of these base chassis, the actual plastic tub, lying around, so I decided that the next best thing would be to actually build it from scratch. So effectively I am converting an MA020, but I'm just building it from scratch rather than having to disassemble one that I've got already. So what we'll do is we're going to install the servo motor, install the pot, solder on the servo wires for this motor. Now full disclosure here, guys, I have already actually tested this and I know it works, so it's not going to be a surprise whether it works or not, because right here, this is what started all this. I think I told you guys before, my Evo back in, maybe even a year ago, I accidentally put, I think, 16 volts through it instead of 7.4, and blew the transistors on this thing, or FETs, I think that's what they call them. So it was smoked, but surprisingly, and this does actually say a lot for the hardware on these things, the chips, it still worked. The car still worked. You just couldn't go full throttle. It would stutter at full throttle, but it would still work after having 16 volts coming through, smoke rising from the car. You could still steer left and right. You could still go forward and backwards. You just couldn't go full forwards. So I put this board I wired it up, and I've already tested it and it works. You can actually steer the car, you can run the car. All that remains to be done is to wire this board in, connect it to the motor, and we've got a Evo in an MA020 shell, which means I can then put a 90mm shell on it. I'm also going to install a atomic SAS, which is like a DWS. Sorry, that's a wrong packet there. I'm looking for something else here. Here we go. One of these is what I want. I've got one of these lying around, so it's the same as the DWS off the Mini Z Evos that you get, but it's one that I have spare, so I'm going to make use of it. So guys, I'm going to start off by soldering the wires on. So guys, this mod is not for the faint-hearted. So I've soldered my motor on. You can see the original motor size, which is way smaller here, and that will not fit in there in any way, shape or form, and the pinion size is wrong for the MA020. So I've used the motor off the MA020 Servo, but wired it to this board. I've used the pot off the standard that comes with the Evo board, and that clips in just fine. They're all the standard size, it's just the motor that's different. And now you can see this is all pieced back together. This is so much easier than the Evo, trying to do the Evo all-wheel drive. I had to change the board on that when I fried this one over here, and that was a nightmare to do. And I've got a video somewhere of the whole thing, and it was not fun changing that at all. Okay, now this bit is in. Really, it's just about putting the next plate on top, which is this bit here. Once that's locked in and you've got all your wires in place, then it gets a bit easier. It's just about tucking all the wires in and connecting everything back up, which shouldn't be as difficult, he says. So I've actually cut out a little piece on this one just to make it easier, because normally you have to thread these things through, and I'd rather just lose the bit of plastic and be able to just slot them through very easily like this. It takes a lot of the work out of it. So there we go. That's a lot of my wires already tidied up. Now, once we've got that into place, there we go. Great. So just go bolt that down. There's a screw that goes in there, and he's forgotten to put the switch in. Okay, so let's go back and do that again and put the switch in position. So guys, I've got the switch in now, which I had forgotten in my haste. Now, I was almost tempted to hot glue this switch down rather than have to screw the little cover thing that goes on it, but I'm going to screw this on instead, as it's supposed to be there, and it does hold everything down in place. So this goes back down there somewhere. I can't remember how exactly now. Oh, there we are. It's like that. After dealing with XRXs and GLAs, the Mini Z can be very frustrating when it comes to actually assembling and disassembling. It's not an easy car when you have to deal with the electronics. Okay. Hi guys, so I'm part way through the build here, and you can see I've put the rear DWS on. I've installed I've had to cut the plastic for the cover in half so it clips over the back. Now, nearly all of this build so far has been done with spares that I've got lying around. So obviously not I don't have motors lying around, but I had one that I bought that I hadn't used yet. This was a spare radio I bought in case I blew one in my Evo after last time. Thankfully I haven't done it again. This atomic rear DWS double wishbone suspension is a kit that I bought a while back with the intention of using it to make my own VE Pro, which is what I've done here, kind of. I have to say, it's not a bad kit for the money. It's half the price of the Kyosho one, but the Kyosho one is better quality. I will say that, definitely better quality, fits together more nicely, but it does the job. And if you take your time just to loosen up the parts, which you do have to do with, if you look at my other videos and ball joints and how we loosen them up, and the GLA video I did and the XOX videos, you can see that that is what makes a difference. The Kyosho one is pretty smooth to start off with. This needs a bit of work, but hey, it's working great now, so I'm happy. All that's left to do is put the front end on, and this is where I've realized that I haven't got enough parts just to make a whole Mini Z from scratch. I've got a few that I've put somewhere and I can't find them, so for the sake of convenience, I'm going to take, you probably remember the Mini Z from my CS Drift video. This is this one here. I'm going to take the front end off this, because I think the VE Pro front end is pretty much the same. I'm just going to take the parts off here and put them on here, and then run the car, and we'll see how it goes. So this is set to 90mm with a double wishbone suspension, just like the MA020 VE Pro. So I'm pretty happy with the build so far. I've tested it, it works. The steering works fine. I'm just going to get the front end installed, and then we'll do some test runs and see how it all works. I have set the gearing quite high on this, again, just because it was easier for me not to have to fish around for a smaller pinion. I've gone for a higher gearing. Obviously that's going to affect the performance but not the handling, so we'll see how that runs, then I'll switch it back for the next video. And what I may do then is, when I switch it back, I'll do a disassemble of what I've done and show blow by blow how it all works. Although I think you saw the important bit at the start with me testing the radio gear. The actual circuit board fits onto the placements for the standard circuit board just fine. I've just had to leave a space so I could fit the receiver chip. That's why I had to cut it in half, otherwise it would have fitted in perfectly, just by making enough space here and here for the two ports. So right, off we go. I'm just going to install the front end now. So what we have before us now is the result of that work. Now I'm just going to show off the lights kit I've got in here. Now Colin made these lights kits for me. I normally do my own lights kits, but in this instance I need something special. So single lights at the front, double lights at the back, fits into the ASF plug, the ICS plug on the Evo, and works like a normal Mini Z, where you get the brake lights when you hit brake, and it works perfectly. So if you want a custom rig made up, I've had one made up for this car as well, which is a an ASF older MA010, but if I turn it on, you'll see straight away double lights at the back. I've also got rear double lights which come on when you brake. But those are made by Colin, and I'll drop a link to his Facebook, and he does custom light rigs amongst other things. It's worth checking him out. But certainly if you need, for some of my setups, double front lamps and double rear LED lamps, he can make them up to any color you want, any type. So go check out his Facebook page. Okay guys, moving on. So what we've got here is a 90mm hybrid. As you saw earlier, I have managed to succeed, and this is now controlled by my NB4. I can control the gyro, which is the lower bar there. There we go. That's the gyro being adjusted. I can turn it off, and I can also use a lot of the other features from this transmitter, which are, as I always go on about, you can check in my previous videos, that I love. So let's take this car apart and show you what we've got here. I'm going to turn it off for a second. Turn the transmitter off. So what have we got here now? So this is the finished article. As you can see, I've got, okay, it looks a little bit messy, but some of that's because I've got the lights rig in here. There's the EVO radio, you can see, the circuit board. The yellow antenna is for the NB4 receiver plug that plugs into this board. I've got nothing holding it in over the top. It just clips in fine and stays okay. That's the gyro there, which has got a heat sink on it. Sorry, a heat wrap on it, shrink wrap off. There's a reason for that. I nearly shorted the whole thing out. I'd finished making it, it took me nearly 2 days. And I accidentally touched the gyro's underneath part to something on the circuit board, and smoke started to come out of the car. I thought I'd ruin the whole thing. So just be careful if you're going to have anything uncovered, that everything else is covered and you won't have an issue. And you can see I've got the atomic rear double wishbone installed. Let's get a bit of this hot glue there. Yep. So that's an atomic rear double wishbone, which I think I mentioned earlier, I think is pretty good, but not as good quality as the Kyosho one, not as smooth. You can make it smoother with a bit of work. And the front end is a standard Mini Z all-wheel drive setup. And there you go. I mean, that works absolutely fine. You can see there's no real mess of wires apart from what I've added on with the lights rig, but you can see that the circuit boards fit in fine and the whole setup works beautifully. Next, I'll take you over and we'll watch some footage of it drifting. As you saw there, I was having a lot of fun with drifting the car. I don't think I can quantify how much this car feels different now to my VE Pro. It feels like a completely different animal. I am going to install front double wishbone suspension, which I've got some lying around. Just got to get all the parts together. The only thing I'm missing is some pivot balls, and then I'm off. But yeah, overall, this has proved to be quite an experience, and I'm very pleased to say that it works absolutely fine, and it's given me the best of both worlds. I've got a newer modern EVO radio using my flysky, and I'm using it in an MA020. All the electronics are the same. It didn't require that much work. The only thing I had to solder was to solder the servo motor, cut the old one off, solder the new one on. Rest of the wiring, the potentiometer, everything else, the part all fitted, clicked straight back in, carefully placed all the wires, and this was far easier than changing a board on an EVO, I can tell you that. So on an EVO all-wheel drive anyway. So with that, guys, that's all for today's video. My next video, I will go and do some more RCP track racing and compare some footage there of different cars. I've got some special videos coming up there. I've got an EVO all-wheel drive versus an EVO rear-wheel drive and see how that plays out. I've also got a video coming up about how to make a standard Mini Z brushless. For this one, it does involve using a board from Banggood. They do a brushless board and get a brushless motor and a lot of soldering. But you can literally change the circuit board and make your car brushless. The only problem with that then is your radio will no longer work, and you'll need either a KT18 ASF or an EX6R, one of those type of radios to operate it. But that's why I went with the EVO board for this one, because I can change the receiver, I can use my Synchro Touch, I can use my EX6R, I can use my NB4. I've got a choice of radios, so it is worthwhile doing. Also, the other thing I've been doing, guys, before I say goodbye, as you can see, I've been doing a bit of custom painting. So here's a few of the cars I've been working on. I think you've seen the Corvette before. These are two I've done recently, and I can say it's very addictive, very, very addictive. But yeah, that's been my passion of recent, and that's probably why I haven't made a video for the last 2 weeks. Okay, guys, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the video, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys all next time.